Have you ever really thought about that camera in your pocket? We're going to dive into a story that starts with a little trick of light known to the ancient Greeks and ends, well, with that supercomputer you use to take selfies. This is the amazing story of how we figured out how to freeze a moment in time, the story of photography.
Okay, so check this out. This is a view of a busy street in Paris taken way back in 1838 by a guy named Louis Daguerre. It is one of the very first photographs of a city ever made. And honestly, for the time, the detail is just mind-blowing. You can make out the buildings, the trees, even the cobblestones.
But here's the thing. There's a mystery hiding in plain sight. This street, the Boulevard du Temple, was a major hub, always packed with horses, carriages, people walking around. So, if it was so busy, where is everybody? Keep that question in your head because the answer tells you literally everything about how this whole thing worked back then.
To solve that little mystery, we need to rewind. I mean, way back. Because before anyone could take a picture, they first had to figure out how to project one. And that's an idea that's thousands of years old.
You know, the word photography itself is the perfect clue. It comes from two Greek words that literally mean drawing with light. I mean, how beautiful is that? It perfectly captures the idea that drove centuries of invention.
So the original light drawing machine was this thing, the camera obscura. And it's not even an invention, it's just a natural phenomenon. If you're in a dark room and you poke one tiny little hole in a wall, the light from outside will stream through and project a perfect upside-down image on the opposite wall. It's like magic, and people as far back as Aristotle were writing about it.
By the 1600s, people had figured out how to harness this little magic trick. Artists started using these portable box-style camera obscuras. They'd point it at a scene, an image would get projected onto a piece of paper inside, and they could just trace it. They were, literally drawing with light.
But that brings us to the biggest problem of all. Projecting an image? Easy. Tracing it? A bit of work, but doable. But how could you get the light itself to do the drawing for you? And then, how do you make that drawing stick around? How do you capture a shadow and make it permanent? That was the real puzzle.
For more than a century, you had all these brilliant inventors and chemists just banging their heads against this problem. In the 1700s, guys like Johann Schultz and Carl Scheele discovered that certain silver salts would darken in the light. And by about 1800, Thomas Wedgwood was making these beautiful outlines of leaves on treated paper. But they all had the same heartbreaking problem. The second they took their creations out into the light to look at them, the whole thing would just keep getting darker and darker until the image was gone forever. You see, they were missing one vital chemical step. They needed to fix the image. They had to find some chemical that would wash away all the light-sensitive stuff that hadn't been exposed to light, basically locking the image in place so you could look at it without destroying it. It's like forgetting to hit save.
Okay, and this is where the story really picks up speed. A handful of super determined inventors are all in a race, whether they know it or not, to finally solve this chemical puzzle and actually give birth to photography as we know it.
The first person to actually pull it off, to make a permanent image from a camera, was this man, Nicéphore Niépce. In 1826, he used a pewter plate coated in, of all things, a type of asphalt, pointed a camera out his window, and just waited. And the process was brutal. The exposure took at least 8 hours, and maybe even a few days.
But it was Niépce's partner, Louis Daguerre, who really made it practical. He perfected a process with a polished silver plate, and then he discovered something absolutely revolutionary, that even a very short exposure created an invisible or latent image on the plate. And this invisible image could then be brought out with chemicals. This was a total game changer. It slashed the exposure time from days down to mere minutes.
And that is the solution to our mystery. The street looks empty because Daguerre's exposure still took several minutes. Every carriage, every person walking by, they were all moving too fast to leave a mark. They were like ghosts. But if you look really close, down in the bottom left corner, one man stood still just long enough. Why? Because he was getting his boots shined. That man and the person shining his boots are the very first human beings ever captured in a photograph. How cool is that?
Now, what's really wild is that at the exact same time, all the way over in England, another inventor named Henry Fox Talbot was perfecting his own process. And looking at them side by side, you can see the two different directions photography was about to go. On the left, Daguerre's image on a metal plate is incredibly sharp, super detailed. And on the right, Talbot's image on paper. It's softer, it's more like a drawing. And this wasn't just a technical difference, it was a whole different philosophy. The daguerreotype was a unique object, like a tiny, perfect painting on metal. There was only one. But Talbot's collidotype process used a paper negative, which meant for the first time you could make multiple positive prints. One was a one-of-a-kind treasure. The other was reproducible. You could copy it, you could share it. And that was the birth of photography as a form of mass media, an idea that would shape the next 150 years.
So, the invention was here. We had it. But it was still incredibly difficult. It was expensive, it was messy, it was for experts. The next great challenge was, how do you take this thing out of the laboratory and put it into the hands of everybody?
And let's be clear just how hard it was. To be a photographer back then, you might need a whole horse-drawn wagon just to carry your darkroom and chemicals. And if you wanted to get your portrait taken, you had to sit perfectly, absolutely still, for minutes on end, sometimes with your head locked in an iron clamp they called a Brady stand, just to keep you from blurring the photo.
People totally joked about it. I love this cartoon from 1855. It shows the strained, miserable reality of sitting for a family portrait with everyone locked in place. It was not exactly a fun, spontaneous activity.
But then, everything changed, and it was thanks to one man, George Eastman, and one absolutely brilliant slogan: "You press the button, we do the rest." He invented flexible roll film, and with it, he invented a whole new way of doing business.
The idea was pure genius. You'd buy a simple camera, like this Kodak Brownie, and it was already loaded with film. You took your 100 pictures, and then you mailed the entire camera back to the factory. They did all the messy chemical stuff, made your prints, and sent everything back to you with a fresh roll of film already loaded in your camera. It was easy, it was cheap, and suddenly everyone could be a photographer. The snapshot was born. For the next 80 or so years, film was king. It ruled the world. But another revolution was quietly brewing in the background, one that was going to replace all that chemistry with electronics and completely change the game all over again. The seeds for this were planted decades earlier. Back in 1957, the very first digital image was made by scanning a photo. Then in 1969, the CCD sensor, which is basically the electronic heart of a digital camera, was invented at Bell Labs. And then in 1992, the first photograph ever was published on this newfangled thing called the World Wide Web. And that brings us right here, to today. That whole long winding road from the camera obscura through pewter plates and chemical baths and rolls of film, it has all led to this moment. Billions of us, billions, are walking around every single day with a camera of unbelievable quality right in our pocket, able to take a picture and share it with the whole world instantly. Which leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. We've gone from a world where one picture took days to create to a world where we create billions every single day. So in this endless river of pixels we all live in, what makes a photograph truly special? What makes a picture worth keeping?